Okay, so get this, Welspun Living Limited, um, formerly Welspun India Limited.
Right.
They want to build the world's largest home textile facility,
Wow.
all in one place. And their Q2 FY25 financials just came out, and it gives us like a little peek into how they're doing. You sent me like a stack of reports, press releases, even auditor's notes.
Oh,
You ready to
wow.
get comfy and dive into the world of sustainable textiles?
Let's do it. I mean, it's impressive what they're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
They're really, not just going for sheer size.
Yeah?
They're really looking to redefine what it means to be a textile company
Uh-huh.
in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Especially with this focus on emerging markets and this whole concept of FMCG of textiles.
FMCG of textile?
Yeah.
What is that?
Okay, so FMCG stands for fast-moving consumer goods.
Okay.
So think like everyday items you get at the store.
Right.
Soap, toothpaste, snacks.
Got it.
Welspun wants to bring that same kind of accessibility and brand recognition
Okay.
to textiles, basically make their products a staple
Interesting.
in every home.
So they're going straight to the consumer instead of just selling to businesses.
Exactly.
Clever. And it looks like it's paying off because they just announced their highest ever quarterly revenue,
Yeah.
a 15.5% jump year over year, reaching 29,360 million.
It's huge. And the interesting thing is, they're not just chasing growth,
Right.
at any cost.
Yeah.
Their EBITDA, which tells us about their operating profitability,
Huh.
is up by a healthy 7.5% with a 14.3% margin.
Wow.
So that means they're making money, but also keeping their costs in check,
Uh-huh.
which is a good sign for a company that's investing so much in expansion.
Makes sense. Their chairman, BK Gwenka, attributes it to their focus on sustainable growth
Yes.
across all their business units.
Yeah.
But let's talk about those emerging segments that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The flooring business, for one, seems to be doing really well.
Oh, they're knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
They hit a record $2,498 million in revenue just this past quarter. And it's not just flooring.
Right.
Their global brand segment is seeing incredible growth too.
Okay.
Over 50% this quarter alone.
Really?
Yeah, it shows they're not just a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
They're really diversifying their portfolio and tapping into all these new markets.
And they're doing all this while so many companies are struggling
Right.
globally because of, all this economic uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
But Welspun seems to be, succeeding by focusing on the Indian market.
Yeah, they're playing to their strengths.
Yeah.
India's economy is relatively stable,
Yeah.
and there's this growing middle class with, more and more purchasing power.
Mm-hmm.
So Welspun is positioning themselves as a household name. They're really living up to their motto, Hargar say, hard dil talk Welspun.
What does that mean?
That means from every home to every heart, Welspun.
Ooh, I like that.
They're expanding their retail presence online and offline,
Makes sense.
so it's easier for people to just buy their products.
That's smart. But it's not just about profits for them, is it?
No, not at all.
They're also really pushing this whole ESG thing, environmental, social, and governance principles.
Yeah, they just got a silver medal from EcoVadis
Wow.
for their ESG rating,
Yeah.
which puts them in like the top 15% of companies
Globally.
globally.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And it's not just for show either.
Okay.
Like their flagship facility is freshwater positive,
Freshwater positive.
meaning they replenish more water than they use.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they have a 30-megawatt solar power plant in Anjar,
Uh-huh.
and they're planning another 18-megawatt one near Vapi
Okay.
to, reduce their reliance on fossil fuels.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is?
Exactly. And I read that they're working with over 29,500 farmers
Wow.
to grow sustainable cotton.
That's incredible.
So by investing in sustainable practices across their whole supply chain,
Right.
they're not only reducing their environmental impact, but also appealing to,
Yeah.
these conscious consumers that really want ethically sourced products.
Right. So they're doing good for the planet and their bottom line.
Yeah, seems like a win-win.
It does. And we haven't even gotten to their expansion plans yet.
Oh yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, tell me more. I'm all ears.
Okay, so Welspun is investing heavily in growth. Like they have a planned capital expenditure of 1,050 crore.
Whoa.
That's over $1 billion.
Yeah.
A lot of that's going towards building like new capacity for towels and bed sheets at their facility in Anjar.
Okay, wait. Didn't you say earlier that they want to build the world's largest home textile facility in one location?
Yeah,
Is that what this Anjar thing is all about?
that's exactly it. That's what this is all about. This investment is going to make Anjar the biggest of its kind globally.
That's pretty ambitious.
Yeah, it's a bold move for sure,
Yeah.
but it shows how serious they are about being like a major player in the textile world.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of output, like how much more can they actually produce once this expansion is up and running?
Well, they're projecting a revenue potential of about 11,150 crore just from this expansion alone.
Wow.
So to put that in perspective, that's almost 40% of their current quarterly revenue.
That's huge.
And they expect this to be operational by Q3 of FY27.
So they're really playing the long game here.
Yeah.
It makes sense, though. They're laying the groundwork for massive growth.
Totally. It's like they're building a textile empire brick by brick.
Yeah. But hold on. Before we, like, crown them the kings of cotton,
Right.
we should probably take a look at their financial health.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
All this growth and investment needs to be sustainable, in the long run.
Absolutely. So what did the reports say about their, financial stability? Are they taking on too much debt to fuel all this growth?
Well, their net debt is currently at 18,323 million.
Okay.
That's a big number. But a lot of that is driven by their capital expenditures, like that big investment we talked about in Anjar,
Yeah.
and also some share buybacks that they've been doing.
So debt isn't always a bad thing, especially if it's being used strategically to invest, in future growth.
Exactly.
But how can we tell if they're managing it responsibly?
That's where financial ratios come in. One of the key things we look at is the net debt to EBITDA ratio.
Oh.
And remember how we talked about EBITDA being a measure of their operating profitability? Well, this ratio tells us basically how many years it would take a company to pay off their debt if they used all of their current earnings.
Got it. So lower is better then.
Yeah, the lower the better. So for Welspun, their net debt to EBITDA ratio is 1.15x,
Okay.
which is actually a pretty healthy number. It means they're generating enough cash flow to manage that debt load comfortably,
Even with all these investments.
even with all the investments.
Yeah. That's good to hear. So it doesn't sound like they're overextending themselves,
Not really, no.
which is always a worry when you see a company growing this quickly. Are there any other ratios that we should be looking at?
Yeah, for sure. The debt to equity ratio is another important one. This basically compares a company's total debt to the amount of money invested by shareholders.
Okay.
A high ratio could mean that the company is relying too much on borrowed money,
Right.
which can make them more vulnerable to, economic downturns.
So where does Welspun stand on that?
They're at a 0.40x, which is well below 1.
Okay.
So it suggests that they're using a healthy mix of debt and equity.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a good sign. They're not overly reliant on borrowing.
Okay. So we've looked at their debt, their profitability. Are there any other key metrics we should look at before we move on?
Yeah, there's one more that I think is worth mentioning. It's called the current ratio.
Okay.
It's a measure of a company's ability to pay off their short-term liabilities
Okay.
using their short-term assets.
So like basically how easily they can meet their immediate financial obligations.
Exactly. And a higher current ratio means they're in a better position to cover those short-term debts. So for Welspun, their current ratio is 1.55x.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a solid number.
Yeah.
It means they have more than enough short-term assets to cover their liabilities. So it's just another sign of their financial strength and stability.
Okay. So we looked at their debt, their profitability, their ability to meet their short-term obligations. What about their inventory? I mean, that's a big part of their business. How are they managing that?
Yeah, good point. We can look at their inventory turnover ratio for that.
What is that?
It tells us basically how quickly they're selling their inventory.
Okay.
A higher ratio usually means that they're managing their inventory efficiently.
Yeah.
And they're not tying up too much cash in stock that's just, sitting around.
Makes sense. What's Welspun's ratio looking like?
It's currently at 0.71x.
Okay.
Now, this figure can obviously vary depending on the industry and the, overall economic climate.
Right.
But overall, when we consider this ratio alongside all their other, really strong financial metrics, it doesn't raise any red flags.
That's good.
It suggests that they're being, pretty prudent and strategic
Yeah.
in how they're managing their inventory.
Okay, so to recap, we're looking at a company with record-breaking revenue, healthy profits, a really solid financial foundation.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to make big bets on the future,
Right.
but they're doing it in a way that suggests that they know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, they're doing all this while also showing a real commitment to sustainability and ethical practices.
Right.
It's not just about profit for them.
Yeah.
They're trying to build a better business.
Yeah. Yeah.
One that's good for the planet and for everyone involved.
Okay, so we covered a lot here. We talked about their financial performance, those ambitious expansion plans, their commitment to sustainability. But let's bring it back to the listener for a sec. Why should anyone care about all this?
Well, I think on a practical level, understanding how a company like Welspun succeeds can be really valuable for anyone interested in business sustainability or even just the global textile market.
Yeah,
They're a great example of how to leverage emerging markets, embrace innovation, and incorporate ESG principles into your core business for long-term success.
right. And their story is just interesting. They're trying to become the world's largest home textile facility in one place.
That's a bold move,
It'll be interesting to see if they can do it.
for sure. And they're focused on transparency, too.
Mm-hmm.
Using that blockchain platform.
Yeah.
For all their fibers and product categories, that's potentially revolutionary.
It is.
It really raises a question about how technology can be used to promote ethical sourcing and accountability in this industry.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if other companies will follow their lead
Yeah.
and push for more transparency in their supply chains.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Welspun's commitment to traceability could become the new standard for the industry.
Especially as consumers get more and more discerning
Right.
and really demand accountability from the brands they support.
Totally. So Wellspun Living is on the move.
Yeah.
That much is clear.
Yeah, it is. But here's a final thought for everyone listening. Could this hyper focus on this one massive location, could that make them vulnerable in the long run?
Hmm. That's a good point. I mean,
What if something happens there, like a natural disaster
right.
or political instability?
Yeah, putting all your eggs in one basket
Yeah.
definitely has its risks.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, having this massive centralized facility
Right.
could give them a huge advantage in terms of efficiency.
Economies of scale.
Exactly. Economies of scale. It's a trade-off for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, it's like a real life case study
Totally.
in, how complex global businesses can be.
Yeah,
You should definitely check back in on them in a future deep dive.
for sure.
See how things are going. This actually brings up another interesting thought.
Okay.
Welspun is really betting big on India as like a manufacturing hub.
Uh-huh.
Do you think this could signal like a larger shift in the textile industry
Potentially.
away from those traditional manufacturing centers?
It's possible. We know labor costs are going up in a lot of places,
Yeah.
and India has a large and skilled workforce.
And they've always had like a history of textile production.
Right, exactly. So there's already a ton of expertise and infrastructure in place.
So Wellspun's success could inspire other companies to be like, hey, maybe we should look at India too.
For sure. I mean, their emphasis on sustainable practices and ethical sourcing
Oh.
could also influence how textile manufacturing evolves in India.
And beyond.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
So to wrap things up, it seems like Welspun Living Limited is a company that's not afraid to think big
Yeah.
and make some bold moves. They're combining financial smarts with this commitment to sustainability,
Yeah.
and they're doing it all while tapping into the potential of a rising economic power like India.
It's a really interesting story.
It is full of intrigue, innovation, and I think a little bit of inspiration, too.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway for everyone listening is
Yeah.
to really pay attention to companies that are pushing the boundaries, challenging the status quo,
Absolutely.
and redefining what it means to be successful in the 21st century.
Yeah, and Welspun is definitely one of those companies.
They are. So that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into Welspun Living Limited.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Hopefully this has given you some new insights
Yeah.
into the world of textiles, sustainable business, and the future of global manufacturing.
Now remember, this is just the start of the conversation. Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and keep exploring the world of business and innovation.
Until next time.
See ya!